Welcome. I am so glad today has come. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and excited for it. You see, we have a special guest. But before we go forward, what I always like to do is, you know the drill. I like you to let me know that you're here. Nothing worse than speaking into a vacuum. And so we see some on YouTube. Thank you. Love you two ladies in one place. So glad to see you, Free. We're glad you're here. And Facebook friends, if you could show up and just give us a shout out in the chat that you are here and we are live, that would make me happy. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Maria. So good to see you. Hi, Lori. So good to see you too. We're glad you're here. And so I have a special guest to welcome, my friend and colleague, Lysa Terkeurts. She's not a stranger to any of you here. And she loves our Conquer support group for women in emotionally destructive marriages. And I invited her here because one of the things that we talked about in our workshop that we did a week ago, last Thursday, was if he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? And Lysa's been through quite a bit in recovering from some of the stuff that was going on in her marriage, which has been pretty public. But I think one of the things that can be most healing, I think, for all of us is to see it. It can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. Lysa's smart. She's beautiful. She knows her Bible. She loves the Lord. She has beautiful kids. She did everything she could do to be the kind of wife and mom that God called her to be. She wanted her marriage to survive, all the things that everyone who's listening to this wants to. And yet it didn't. And so Lysa's here to talk about her journey of understanding herself. Yes, her husband was doing some things that were really destructive to her and her marriage, but she had some things to learn about herself through that. And that's one of the things that we want you to learn and conquer, is that he may be doing some awful things, but yet you're still there. You're still permitting it, tolerating it, enduring it, suffering through it, believing that somehow God's going to change it. And so I want to just talk to Lysa about what in the world began to wake you up to it's not just what he's doing to you, but how you're cooperating with that or participating in that or allowing that to happen to you. Everyone's saying hello to you. Hello, 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 Lysa. Everybody's really happy to see you here. So welcome.
Hello.
Lysa, it looks like you're frozen. You're
Oh,
frozen. There you go. Oh, oops. You were frozen. Are you unfrozen?
I think I should be out of frozen.
Okay.
I have good internet. So hopefully, yeah. But just hello, Leanne, Michelle, Kelly, Mary. So I'm so grateful for you and everyone else signing on. Leslie, it's such a good question. It's such an important question. And part of what helped me get out, well, first of all, it took me a long time. And I look back on that and I think, okay, part of my motivation was to leave room for God to work. That's noble. But I also have to acknowledge that part of it was also, I didn't understand that it was okay for a Christian woman to draw boundaries. And I think some advice givers that are well-meaning and well-respected, I think their highest priority was to save the marriage rather than to make sure I was protected. And then just inside of me, you know, I didn't want to be a divorced woman. And I didn't want my family to be broken apart. And I had promised my kids that, you know, when they would hear of their friends' parents getting a divorce, I promised my kids that they would never go through that. And so, you know, there was a lot that factored in. So it took me a long time. I think what finally gave me the courage, Leslie, to say enough is enough is that I started working on my own belief system. And I started really asking myself the question, what is true according to God's word? And what is healthy according to solid therapeutic principles, biblical therapeutic principles? And where am I enabling and being codependent? And that is making me stay when I shouldn't stay. I knew that I could no longer work on him. And so, yes, so I needed to yeah, I'd been working harder on him than I was working on myself. And so it was absolutely crucial for me to work on me.
So what was was there a light bulb moment that helped you kind of see working on him was getting me nowhere and it would be okay biblically for me to work on me, that wasn't selfish or that wasn't um, putting walls up or that wasn't denying God could heal or any of the beliefs that we tend to have around working on us?
I think there were several light bulb moments, Leslie, but I'll tell you a couple of very specific ones. I was studying one day, someone had said, Lysa, it's honorable. What a Christian woman does is she lays down her life for others. So you are required to lay down your life for other people and to not be selfish. And Jesus laid down his life. And you know what? It dawned on me, Leslie, as I went home and I started thinking about that, praying through it and reading the scripture. You're right. Jesus did lay down his life for a high and holy purpose. Jesus did not lay down his life to enable bad and destructive behaviors to continue.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
Yeah, that was a big epiphany for me. Another big epiphany for me is when I was working through some of these things with my counselor, Jim Kress, and he, as well as some women in a support group that I was part of, which is one of the reasons why I love Conquer. I'm a big proponent of Conquer because I think sometimes we learn from hearing the stories of other people and we can have epiphanies for other people that we need to have for ourselves. And I think another big epiphany through talking with my counselor, but also in my support group, is I started to realize I was not really doing my husband any favors by staying and enabling bad behavior to continue. Because the more I tried to rescue him from the consequences that I was so afraid of would be unleashed, not just on him, but on our entire family, the more I prevented those consequences because I was too afraid of them happening to me and my kids, the more I allowed natural consequences of his actions to maybe wake him up. And after I knew I had done everything possible that I could do that was healthy, I was doing things that were unhealthy. I was trying to control the situation in ways that ultimately I didn't have any control over. And, rescuing him from consequences because I was so scared they would be unleashed on me and my kids as well, just didn't do him any favors. And so me staying and trying to just hold everything together when he was unwilling and possibly even because of some substance abuse at times, unable. So unwilling and unable for him to own his choices, for him to work on himself. That was another life, but I am not his savior. I can be his wife, but I'm not his savior. And if I try to keep stepping into the role of savior, then that's where I'm going to get into trouble.
You're frozen? I'm not sure if you're frozen or you stopped or you're waiting for your internet to catch up with you.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, I can be his wife, but I cannot be his savior. I just can't. It's not, and it's not right for me to try to play that role.
Well, he has a savior. He has a savior.
And
if he wants one. Yeah.
He has. That's right. Yeah. And I don't need to get in the way of what he desperately needs. What he desperately needs is to be able to have his own wake up call. I could sound the alarms. I could give him the wake up.
Yeah, Lysa, we're having a real hard time
with
the connection. I'm not sure what's going on. Doesn't seem to be at my end, but well, let me just summarize what I think I hear you saying, just so that we can make sure. I think you're saying that I can love him, but the highest form of love is to respect someone's choices, even if they're bad ones. And so to respect that he is a full-grown adult who is allowed to make choices. When the rich young ruler made the choice to not follow Jesus, Jesus didn't beg him. He didn't go chase him. He let him go. But the most profound statement after that is he looked at him and loved him and let him go. And so I think this is really an important thing for us as women, because sometimes we're so full of anger and hatred, we just want to throw them out. And I think then we feel guilty. And so then we take them back because we threw them out in a way that was hateful and unloving. But when we can really see God's heart and have God's heart and love even our enemy in the moment and wish them well, but not feel like we can put them in our company to continue to harm us, we can have a clear conscience. We can know we've loved well, and yet we've not enabled sin to continue to harm us, even if it's going to harm them.
Absolutely. And I see in the chat here, which thank you guys so much for all of your comments, because it helps us make sure to address specifically exactly what you're saying. Some people are saying it's also due to embarrassment. We don't want to be embarrassed that things have gotten to the place where they've gotten, and it is embarrassing in some aspects to for me, I really resonate with that because I've been in ministry. And so it seems like I did all the things that I was teaching other people to do, and yet I was getting a result that didn't really add up, if you will. But Leslie, another epiphany that I had to have was I am not walking away. I am accepting a reality that I did not choose and I did not want, but mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs. And so that was another big epiphany. I remember where I was sitting outside and I was looking up at the sky.
Oops, she's frozen again. So we're all anxious to hear Lisa's epiphany. But in the meantime, if you're interested in having a support group for yourself, please go to leslievernick.com/conquer sign up, because that will give you the information about this Conquer group that we're talking about. Lisa, are you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry, Leslie. Where I'm at today, there's tornado warnings. And so it may possibly be unstable weather. A tornado just went through right near where I'm at. So that may be an issue. I can control a lot, but I can't control the tornadoes. So I'm so sorry that it keeps freezing, but we'll just press on. So as long as everyone knows.
Yeah. And I think that's part of life. This is an illustration of life, that it doesn't always go perfectly. It doesn't always go the way you want. And how do you press on?
I know. So I'm so sorry. I keep looking out the window. I'm like, this is one thing I can't control. So, but I was sitting outside my house one day and I kept saying, I'm not a woman who wants to give up. I don't give up. I press in sickness and in health till death do us part. And those words that I took in my vows, I kept thinking I don't want to break my vows. And then it occurred to me, I'm not breaking my vows. I'm not walking away. I am accepting a reality that this is a marriage that no longer honors God, because as an image bearer of Christ, it was destructive to me. And God does not want his women staying in a destructive marriage. And like you've so profoundly taught, there's such a big difference between a difficult marriage and a destructive marriage. And Leslie, I'll be forever grateful for so much of your wisdom. I know I've said it before, but I'm thankful for what you do in these Conquer groups. I've watched so many of your YouTube videos. You were secretly my biggest help. And I'm just so grateful for that. But you helped give me a lot of those epiphanies too. And I'm just grateful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That just touches me. Lisa and I have known each other for years and years and years and years, way back when neither one of us had written any books. And so it's just an honor to have God circle our paths back together. And I think it's so important that as you've talked about your journey, so as you started to wake up, Lisa, what were some of the first things that you began to do differently from this new perspective of, wait a minute, I'm called to take care of me and steward me. I'm God's daughter, and I can love him without enabling him. I'm enabling him by being passive and quiet and long-suffering, which is great biblical qualities, but sometimes misused in inappropriate ways.
Exactly. A big thing for me, Leslie, and this may not apply to everyone, but there were seasons I had to go no contact. And if there had to be contact because of the children, then I would keep the interactions very, very limited in a public place. And oftentimes I would ask for someone else to be present because there was a level of control and manipulation that I started to recognize. I can work on me a lot, but again, I also have to be careful with the input and, like what he says to me or what he was able to, the thoughts that sometimes he would put in my head. It was just too much for me. So I had to really limit our interactions. And, another thing I learned through this process is you don't have to show up to every drama you're invited to. And I used to think his requests were my responsibility. He wanted a conversation, I had to give him a conversation. He wanted a meeting, I had to give him a meeting. And I learned no. It is okay for me to establish what I do and do not have to give, what I am willing to tolerate, and what I'm no longer willing to tolerate, and what I can do, and what I can't do. And so boundaries became healthy, responsible, good boundaries became a big part of that, but definitely limiting my interactions.
And I think I love this word, limits, because I think we've tried to be superheroes as women. I think we've been groomed to somehow be the savior, be the rescuer, be the superhero, be the long sufferer beyond what human capacity would be wise to. And so to be able to say, I have limits. I don't have to come to every party. I don't have to have every conversation he wants. I can't meet his every need. Even in normal marriage, that's healthy to come to a place of, I can't be your everything and you can't be my everything. That's not what God even made marriage to be. But we've kind of bought into a love script of Hollywood and Harlequin that somehow they have to make us happy and we have to make them happy. And of course, we're going to fail because it's not possible.
That's right, Leslie. And we know we have limits in certain areas of our life. We know that we have limits in our bank account. Nobody today is going to suddenly give everyone access to their limited funds in their bank account because that would be irresponsible to do so. And we're limited not because we're selfish. We're limited not because we are unchristian. We're limited because we're human. Only God is limitless. Only God is unlimited. And when we start acting like we are unlimited in our emotional capacity, just like we're limited in our financial capacity, we're limited in our emotional capacity. And if we start acting like we're unlimited, then we will go bankrupt emotionally. And that had certainly happened to me.
Lysa, here's an illustration that I actually use with the women at the retreat that we're going to do next week. So I'll share it here. And I don't know if you've ever heard this or if anyone's told you that we did this, but as children, we learn that we have limited capacity to hold our urine. We never held our urine before, but once we get to be around 2 or 3, we get potty trained. And so we learn that we have to hold our urine. So if we want to be adults, if we want to grow up and not pee our pants, but we have limited capacity for that. And we learn when we're at capacity to take care of ourselves and go to the bathroom. No one in their right mind would think that's selfish. That's just good stewardship. But what we haven't learned as women sometimes is our emotional capacity. Like we have only so much capacity to hold our anger or hold our stuff. And when we're at capacity, and sometimes an abuser will push us to our capacity so that we end up peeing all over ourselves or vomiting all over them and ourselves. And then we look like the crazy one. We look like we're out of our mind. We look like we have no control. And we're sort of allowing ourselves to get to that place because we've not accepted. We have limitations and we have only so much capacity.
That's right, Leslie. And, God never calls us to control another person, but evidence of his spirit working in us is self-control. So we are responsible to use self-control, which is part of the fruit of the spirit. And I know for me, I did this exercise one time, Leslie, where I opened up my journal and I wrote down on one side, this is what Lysa looks like when she is respecting her limitations. I know I'm talking about myself in third person, but just go with me here. And then this is what Lysa looks like when she is overdrawn. and she has pushed past her limits. And normally I am patient, loving, kind, generous, all of those things.
And we all want to know what Lysa looks like on the other side of her journal, don't we? So she's frozen for a minute, but it would be a great exercise for all of us to do.
But
Yeah. So go ahead, Lysa. What's the other side? We're waiting to hear.
sorry, the weather outside is really treacherous. But when I, like, normally I'm loving, kind, patient, generous, but when I am pushed past my emotional capacity, I become a version of myself that I don't like. And the thing is, it's not just with the person who's hurting me, it's with everyone in my life, including my children. And my children deserve one healthy parent. And so, you know, me recognizing my limitations is not just for my sake, but so I don't know if you caught that last part, Leslie, but me recognizing my limitations, it's not just for my sake, it's for my children as well, and other people I do life with.
Mm-hmm. And you said something that we said quite a bit in the workshop, and I just want to reiterate it because your kids deserve one healthy parent, because we have seen now, and I'm sure you've done the research too, on the epigenetics of children raised in a home that's just, destructive, abusive, that you're not helping them by allowing them to be in a scary, hurtful, traumatic environment day after day. It's actually harming them. And so we think, oh, it's better for the kids that we stay. And I'm sure you believe that for a long time, Lysa. And talk about that, because I don't, I've talked to your children, I've seen them, I've heard the impact that was on them, but I think we believe that it's always better for them to have both parents in the house together. What was your experience of that?
Well, unfortunately, my kids were old enough to where they could see things that maybe younger kids couldn't see. They made their own discoveries. They were trying to keep secrets because they didn't want to mess up the family either. And so it was harder on them than even what I knew. And at some point, my kids came to me and said, enough is enough. Like, enough is enough, Mom. This is destroying all of us. And my thought had always been, I don't want to do this to my children. It was already being done to my children. My decision wasn't doing anything except accepting reality and choosing to finally step into the light when so much had been in darkness, not just for me, but for them as well.
Right. It's like we're carrying a dead body. The marriage is already dead, but we're saying, oh, if I do this, I'm killing my marriage. The marriage is already dead. The vows have been broken repeatedly. There's been no repentance. The marriage is dead. And yet I think you've used that illustration of the CPR, of trying to keep the dead body alive. And sooner or later, I mean, there's some nobility to that, but sooner or later, if it doesn't do its own work to revive itself.
Yes. And, I want to be sensitive too, because maybe some of you were like me and you stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed. And now you may be having epiphanies like, I stayed too long, and there can be a lot of shame in that. There can be a lot of guilt in that. What have I done? Why did I do that? Why did I accept this behavior? But, a great comfort to you is that when you know better, you do better. And so that's why it's important. This Conquer group is crucial, Leslie, because you're helping us know better so we can do better. And also, I think one good thing in me staying as long as I did, which I do wish that I would have drawn hard and fast parameters and then soon boundaries. I do wish I would have done that earlier, but I did lower my post-divorce regret down to 0. Like, I can look back and say, really, there was no stone left unturned. And again, I think there were healthy reasons for that. And I also think there were very unhealthy reasons. So I'm not saying that a woman needs to stay until she knows no stone has been left unturned. But what I am saying is, if you are one of those women like me and you're kind of beating yourself up, why did I stay? Why did I endure this for so long? I would imagine that when you look back now, you have less of those moments where you're like, well, I could have tried this, I could have tried that. I look back now and I mean, there was nothing else I could have tried.
That's so powerful. And I think for our women to understand that, again, it's not even as a good wife, it's not your responsibility to change or fix someone. It is your responsibility to love and to speak truth Just like if your husband has a cancerous growth on his neck and he can't see it, you would want to tell him. Whether or not he gets help for that is a whole different subject. And so we do want to speak the truth. But when someone is playing with fire and they refuse to let go of that fire, the Bible says, do you not see that the end of this story is death? The end of this story is death. And yet we're trying to ignore a reality, which is what you said, Lysa, that healthy people live in reality, even when it's hard and even when they don't like it, they face it.
Yeah. And another thing, Leslie, too, I was afraid of what other people would think, because I can't stand when people say, there's two sides to every story. I get the sentiment behind that, and how, yes, in a normal conflict, there are two people involved in the conflict, but this is not a spectator sport. When there is a marriage falling apart and a family falling apart, why are we picking sides? This is not a spectator sport. This is not, like, we don't need to be picking sides. And so I just remember thinking, what will people think? But Leslie, I don't know that this is true in all cases, but when I finally stopped, I finally took my hands off, I left room for God to move. I let his choices be his choices, and let his consequences be his consequences. And yeah, maybe at first people had questions, but I think now people so clearly see the truth, because when healing doesn't happen, it becomes more and more apparent the longer someone chooses it. And so, apart from me, there is a reality of what his life looks like now. And so I don't have people saying that anymore to me.
Yeah. And I think I would say, to add to that, part of getting healthy is not needing people to validate your decisions as okay. It doesn't mean that you don't consult people, that you don't invite people to speak truth into your life, but part of becoming an adult is being okay with not everybody liking your decision, and knowing that you're making the right step forward. And I think that can be tremendously freeing for a woman who tends to live by our approval rating, and do you like me, and do you think I'm doing the right thing, instead of saying, I'm gathering wisdom from a multitude of counselors, and then I'm responsible. The only person who's responsible ultimately at the end of the day for the way I live my life is me. And so I can't keep switching my life according to what you think I should do.
Yeah. And we don't owe anybody the full story. We don't owe anybody all the details. We don't owe everybody an explanation. We just don't. So I love that you're adding that in. And at the same time, I think it's so painful for some of us, to have people, friends that we have loved and trusted and invested decades in, coming against us in a time where we feel so vulnerable and shocked. And so, yes, I agree. As we get healthier, we are able to see some of those things more clearly for what they are. And in the middle of trauma, it's just shocking and hard,
It is. It's shocking and hard. And it's ugly information. Like, wow, I thought you loved me. I thought we were good friends. I thought that even if I made choices that you didn't agree with, we were still friends.
Mm-hmm.
But our friendship is depending on you controlling me. Basically, me doing what you want me to do. And I don't want to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I don't want to, come to your birthday party, or I don't want to stay married any longer because it's not good for me. If I don't do what you want, I get thrown away. And that's the essence of a controlling relationship. And so, as painful as it is to find out that information, it might be really helpful information for you to know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I'll do confession time. Is it okay if I do confession time?
Oh, people will love confession time from you. They love it from me too. Because it makes us feel normal. It makes us feel normal to know that we all have our stuff, right?
We do. We definitely all have our stuff. So and I've worked on this a long time, but classic people pleaser. I'm just going to raise my hand in that. And it's something that I'm definitely improving on, but I had a real epiphany. I had an epiphany with my people pleasing. And my epiphany was that I wasn't pleasing people just to try to keep them happy. Often I was pleasing people, not just to keep them happy, but I was pleasing them because I was afraid that if I made them unhappy, they would take from me something I was getting from them that I feared I wouldn't be okay if they took it from me. And so, like, maybe they were giving me support, and if they were giving me support and I kind of went against what they said, then they would take the support, and that made me afraid. But what I realized is we will always desperately want from other people what we fear we will not get from God. So I'm going to say it one more time. We will always desperately want from other people what we fear we will not get from God. And so a big epiphany for me in people pleasing is, what am I really afraid of? Like, what am I really afraid of? That God won't provide for me? That this person would walk away from me and reject me? Well, if that's the kind of person that would walk away and reject me, chances are they're eventually going to walk away and reject me.
Yeah, epiphany that I got around this, Lysa, that might be interesting to you is in First Peter, where it says he has given us everything we need for life and godliness. And so when I don't have what I think I need, I'm saying, okay, God, what is it that I need? And maybe it is the courage to be a bigger person and say no. And I'm going to need that courage, and I'm going to need that strength to tolerate them withdrawing their support for the next step in my life. And so really shifting my mindset that I have everything I need because God says I will, but it might not feel like a need. Like, who needs broccoli? I never feel a need for broccoli, but I need it, or vitamins. We don't feel a need for those things, but yet God gives us those in our nutrients and all the kinds of things he gives us courage. We don't always feel a need for courage. We feel a need for affirmation, but sometimes being courageous is harder, and having to be put in a hard situation where we develop courage is what we need in those moments. And so just seeing that God does care about what we need, instead of us feeling like we've got to grab it from people, God will give us the right people to give us what we need.
Absolutely. And it kind of goes hand in hand, when we are people pleasers, sometimes we do have a different kind of desperation for things to be okay. And, I know for me, desperation can lead to degradation. In other words, the more desperate I am, the more sometimes I'll let people treat me in a way that I should not allow myself to be treated. And so I've really worked on that. The story of Esau, trading his inheritance for a bowl of beans, because that desperation led to degradation. And so it's not just working on my people pleasing, but it's also identifying, and it's not that I walk around like, oh, I'm desperate. It's not that. But like, in my heart, where do I have a more desperate tendency? Like, I want this, but I feel like if I don't have it, I need this, and maybe I won't survive without this. And so I have to really watch those things inside of my heart. But here's the good news. It gets better. When we work on it, like you said, Leslie, having the support of other people around you, having your wisdom in our lives, the Conquer groups, and, reading good books, and just when you know better, you do better. So it's our responsibility to really put ourselves in a place where people can speak not just wisdom, but experiential wisdom. And that's why, Leslie, I'm so grateful for you, because you are able to speak into this, having researched the nuances of being in not just a difficult marriage, but one that has turned destructive.
Yeah. You're so wise, Lysa, in talking about what's going on. The people pleasing, sometimes we think, oh, if I just learn to say no. It's not about saying no, because we know the word. We said it since 2. We know how to say no. It's the fear of what might happen. And, am I gonna lose their appreciation? Am I gonna lose their support? Am I gonna lose my security? Am I not gonna be comfortable? It's gonna make me nervous that they're afraid. They're angry at me. Whatever it is, those are moments of self-awareness. Like you did, you dug deep and said, what is driving me? I know how to say no. I'm just not. What's driving that? And I think that's so important for our growth, so we can kind of get at the root and pull it up, instead of just caving in or being angry and saying no. So many women can't say no without their anger. And then, of course, later they feel bad. And so then they retract their no because they said it in a moment of fury instead of a moment of strength.
Yeah. And I was reading the comments and I so relate to this one. The fear is almost debilitating. And I agree. What I've gone through, it is life altering, but it doesn't have to be life ruining. And so, at some point we have to say the fear is real, but I will not let it overtake me. I'm going to use wisdom-based thinking, not fear-based thinking. And I know it's hard. I know it's messy. And there's a million nuances that play into this that make it difficult for us. But like I said, while, being in a destructive marriage is life altering, it doesn't have to be life ruining. And so I'm so grateful that, again, that we have good resources that you've provided, Leslie, that can really help us have those personal epiphanies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is, I see all the chat too, this is difficult for me. This is difficult for me. Yes, it is. It is. And that's why we don't want you to do it alone. It is difficult. Lysa, you had your buddies next to you. I've met them. I've played Monopoly Deal with them. Your good friends who have supported you through this. And we do need other women next to us, women who've maybe taken a couple of steps ahead of us, that we can see it can be done. Just listening to Lysa and saying, wow, you're not as much of a people pleaser today. It still might get you sometimes, depending on who it is that you're facing, but you're recognizing, and you're not the same as you were a year ago or 5 years ago. And this helps us to know, okay, I can too. I can grow too. These are the steps. This is the support I have to move forward. And I think that is so important. I don't think we grow our best in a vacuum by ourselves. I don't think God made us that way.
I agree. I think it's so important, Leslie, and that's another thing I love about the Conquer groups is that we're able to make connections with other people who are going through similar circumstances as us. And I remember praying, God, I need some friends who understand the unique difficulties of being in this specific situation, not to jump in the pit with me, but to have a better understanding of the difficulties, but also so we can cheer each other on and walk beside each other in a path that we never expected any of us would take. And so, I think having friends who really get it and who have not just studied and done Bible studies. I love Bible studies. I love studying. I love reading. I love all of that. But some of my friends had only studied here's how you save the marriage. Here's how you improve your marriage. And so now, I also need friends who understand. And when that is no longer possible, we got to turn our attention to, okay, how do I move on from here? I have a personal board of directors. I run the nonprofit organization, both Haven Place Ministries and Proverbs 31 Ministries. So those have governing boards, right? But I never had a personal board of directors. And so I just have a couple of people in my life that I consider part of my personal board of directors. And when I hit a spot where I can't clearly see what's wise and what's unwise in this, those people who know the story, who are familiar with the difficulties of the past relationship dynamics in my marriage, and who knows the kind of healing that I've had to do, not just, because of the marriage, but also just healing that I needed from past traumas. And they're familiar with all of that. They can help me think through things and process things. But again, Leslie, that's one of the beautiful things about having a Conquer group is because, you may not be able to just walk down the street and find someone who gets it. But in the Conquer group, you're going to find women who do.
Yeah, and you're going to find women in your local area. You're going to find women night and day, which is beautiful because we have members from all over the world. And so if you're on the West Coast and you're up at midnight, it's 3 a.m. in the East Coast, but it might be 6 o'clock in the evening somewhere else. And so to be able to know that there is someone there to pray for you or to listen can be powerfully affirming in a moment of just confusion, or I don't know what the next right step, or just for prayer. So thank you. That's so important that we are not walking this journey alone. I don't know anybody who can mature in a godly way through anything all by themselves.
That's right. And when your trust has been broken, you can't fix trust in isolation. Trust has to, if it was broken in a relationship, then trust has to be repaired in relationships. Now, that does not mean with the person who broke your trust. If that's not possible, trust can actually be repaired and worked on in the context of other healthy relationships, but trust cannot be worked on in the context of isolation. And so, that was big for me. And another thing I'll say, Leslie, that used to drive me crazy, and this was a real hard thing that I had to come to grips with, is I misunderstood when people would say, okay, Lysa, now it's time for you to work on yourself. I would misunderstand that statement, because what it felt like is you need to work on what you did to drive the issues in your marriage. And my heart was so broken and so shattered over choices that were not mine, that when someone would say that, it just heaps so much shame on me. I didn't understand that actually we can set that on a shelf. That may need to be autopsied at some point, but not now. We can set that on a shelf and say, okay, here's the little part that I know I need to get better at. Maybe it's boundaries. So we can work on that within ourselves. That doesn't accept full responsibility for any of his choices, right? But it does give us a place to start growing from here. And so that was just another epiphany that I had, is that, I don't have to own the marriage falling apart in order to work on myself. I can work on little pieces and parts and start slowly without blame and shame and all of that. So,
Lysa, would you talk a little bit about, the resistance that we have? I read somewhere that we allow someone to mistreat us to the degree that we mistreat ourselves.
Oh,
and that was kind of a like, oh, I don't like that. But I think there's a grain of truth to that how do we begin to biblically value and love ourselves, to steward our one precious life better, so that we don't feel like, well, I'm not lovable, I don't deserve this, I'm not worth working on, I'm not worth, and we may not believe that blatantly, but when we let someone treat us that way over and over again, there must be something inside that believes that to some degree. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, Leslie, I love that you're asking this, because I wrote a poem, and I'll read a little part of it here, because for me, I knew I shouldn't be treated this way, but I also believed the lie that no other person would ever want me. Mm-hmm. And so do you see the subtle nuance there? Like when you're told over and over and over, you're lucky to be married to me, no other person will be able to deal with all of your issues and this and that and the other. I started to believe things about myself that when now, I'm several years past that. And like I said earlier, I had to go no contact. So when I stopped hearing those things and I started to discovering who am I really apart from that tunnel of chaos, I started to see, wow, actually, I don't suck the fun out of the room when I walk in. Actually, I'm a really fun person. Like when I walk in the room, the fun has just walked in the room. But I was told for so long, like, oh, you're such a Debbie Downer. Now, why was I told that? Because I wanted rules and parameters put in place to try to protect me and my kids. And yeah, so maybe in that scenario, there was a whole lot less fun because I was in survival mode. But now that I'm not in survival mode, it's like, wow, actually, I started to have these epiphanies about myself. And so I think we have to make the choice to do brave things even before we feel brave. So let me read you a little part of this poem. Being brave is not always something you feel, it's something you do. You do it in the face of fear and unknown outcomes and risk you really don't want to take. You do it when your enemy is staring you down with taunting statements of defeat. You do it not to prove there's something great inside of you. You do it You do brave because if you don't, something will die inside of you. You do brave things because it's time to rise up and speak up and let truth find its freedom with your voice. The hurt you've had to overcome is hard, really hard. What happened was wrong. Acknowledge it, speak it, cry over it, but don't die over it. You've been hurt, but you don't have to live hurt. And then the poem keeps going. But I just think that instead of in talking about the answering your question in a theory, I just wanted to give practically, like, you may have had words spoken over you that may have somehow gotten inside of you. And sometimes when someone speaks a line over you and that line gets inside of you, it becomes a lie that you believe. And when a line becomes a lie that you believe, you start to own it and repeat it to yourself. Then it can become a liability in all your future relationships and even in how you see yourself. So we've got to go back and we've got to say, what were some lines spoken over me that suddenly got inside of me and became a lie that I believed? We got to untangle that. And I certainly have had to untangle it.
That is so powerful. And that is our work to do as humans, whether we're in a relationship that's destructive or not. We still have lines that were told. I have lines inside of me, Lysa, that were told to me when I was little, and I can still get tripped by them sometimes because they were a lie that I believed. And even though I don't consciously believe it anymore, sometimes that line gets triggered in a current relationship and it sets me back a bit and I have to kind of regroup. And so that's so powerful.
Yeah, I'll give you one, Leslie, that was spoken over me. It was spoken over me that I really should never wear a dress because I didn't have pretty legs. And so, Leslie, for decades, I didn't want to wear dresses. And do you know how many wedding invitations I declined?
We want to hear the rest of this story, Lysa. So hopefully the weather will calm down in a minute and you'll be back. There you go.
I wish I could turn my camera and show you what it looks like outside. It is so scary, but we're pressing through. But I wouldn't want to wear a dress because that line had been spoken over me that I shouldn't wear a dress. And when that lie is spoken over you, or that line, and then you believe it, that lie starts to not just mess with the way you think, but mess with the way you act. And so the good news is, Leslie, this past summer, I wore a dress almost every single day. And it was such a victory.
I saw you in the dress that you were going to wear to the wedding, and it was so cute. It was an adorable dress, and the great shoes you had with it was great.
Yeah. So, I just think there's some little, I like to call them rebellious acts of resilience, where we just go, you know what? That was a lie. And it's a lie I'm no longer going to believe. And we put on the dress or whatever the equivalent is in your story. And we say, I'm going to commit a rebellious act of resilience. And it just feels so empowering.
Yes, I love that. A rebellious act of resilience is a powerful way of enabling you to take risks, to try new things, to perhaps realize that the lie that you believed was a lie. Because when we're believing it, we don't recognize it as a lie. I told myself for years I couldn't write. That's why I didn't get my PhD. I told myself I can't write. I can't write. I could never get a dissertation. I can't write. Of course I could write. I just didn't know I could write. But because I believed that lie for 20 years, I didn't write a thing until God convinced me to take a risk, to put my brave on, to take that.
And what a sad thing. Yeah, what a sad thing for all of us. Had you not written your books, Leslie, right? So sometimes these lies are more significant than just how we feel about ourselves. They can derail who we're supposed to be.
Not just, God's purpose. So you know what she's going to say. They derail God's purpose in our life. Just like if I had never written a book because I stayed living in fear instead of taking that rebellious act of resistance, which I love that. Resilience, not resistance, rebellious act of resilience. Are you here or are you still frozen?
I'm here. I'm here. I can see.
Good. I hope you're not having tornado warnings like in your house or outside your window.
I'm not sure because I made sure everything was silent before we got on the interview, but a tornado did go through just down the street a little while ago. So but I'm fine. I'm in a good, safe place. It's just the internet is, being affected by the weather. So thank you guys for being patient. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Lysa, we have some questions. Would you be open if I read them and you might give your comments on them?
Absolutely.
I know you need to leave in a couple minutes, so I wanted to get some questions here that people had that, let's see. How do you know when to give up?
Well, that phrase "give up" is really complicated because that almost sounds like you're doing something that could be seen as weak or selfish. And so I like to say, when do you know when to accept reality? And so, it was important for me to rephrase that. Words frame our reality. And so when I thought I was just giving up, it made me feel terrible. But here's what I think you need to watch for when accepting reality. When you start working harder on another person than they're willing to work on themselves. And also when you are giving someone a lot of access to your life, but they are not bringing that same level of responsibility. My mistake is I was giving level 10 access to someone who was only bringing sometimes level 3, sometimes level 2, sometimes level 1, sometimes level 0 responsibility. And the distance between those two is where dysfunction can grow. And so you have to be honest with yourself about what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. And, if it is not honoring to God to stay in a marriage that is dishonoring to God. And so again, big difference between, like you said, Leslie, difficult marriage and destructive marriage. But I think it's just crucial to be honest with what you see and learn to accept reality and acknowledge reality and call it what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because you can't even take the next right step. If you're lost, you have to acknowledge you're lost. Doesn't mean you're going to be lost forever. But if you don't even admit you're lost, you can't pull out your map. You can't change your GPS coordinates. You can't make a phone call to ask for help. And so if you feel a lump in your breast and you don't want to acknowledge that first reality, oh, I have a lump in my breast. Well, then you can't find out the rest of the information. Is this cancerous? This is my first acknowledging reality. Now I need to be a good steward and find out if there's any truth to that fear. And if there is, again, we don't want to make a big story. Oh, that means I'm going to die. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to die, but it does mean that you have a problem that you need to take care of now. And then see what happens next.
That's right, Leslie. And what I said was, and you need to invite people in to help you. If I find a lump in my breast, which I have before, I don't just go, if I find a lump in my breast, which I have before, I don't just go and decide, okay, well, I'm just going to put a cream on it and hope it goes away. No, I invite people in who are educated to know what I should do about that.
And what it is.
And what it is.
Some of you might be thinking, yeah, you might be thinking, I'm in a difficult marriage or am I in a destructive marriage? I don't know what it is. So invite some trusted people. We have a test on our website that helps you discern, am I in a difficult marriage? Am I in a disappointing marriage? Am I in a destructive marriage? Take the test. Just like you would take a biopsy. If you had a lump in your breast, you would get some more information that would help you make better decisions.
Yes, that's so good, Leslie. Yeah, absolutely.
Lysa, someone said, I really love your poem. Can you share a printout of that with us?
Well, I will check with my publisher. I actually just finished my next book, and that poem is in the next book. So I will check with my publisher just to make sure I don't violate anything that they have going on. But I will do my very best. And Leslie, I can just send it to you, and you can make sure people can get it.
Yeah, we'll put it on the Facebook page if we can, and you check with your publisher about that. And if we can put it on the Conquer site, then we can do that as well if they would prefer it being on a more private site so it's not out everywhere before the book comes out. Okay.
That's
All right.
awesome.
So yeah, that's great. What's the name of your new book coming out?
Okay, well, forever, it's on trust issues. And so there's 3 parts to it. There's trusting other people when your trust has been broken and you just feel very skeptical. And then it's also, how do I learn to trust myself again? And then certainly trust issues with God. And so the book title, we haven't announced it publicly, but we're among friends here, so I can tell you. But it's, I Want to Trust You, But I Don't. And then the subtitle is going to be some version of Moving Forward When You Feel Skeptical of Others, Doubtful of Your Own Discernment, and Unsure of What God Will Allow Next.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. We all struggle with that. All right. I want to be respectful of your time. Let me just give you a couple other questions. Let's see. Lysa, how did you get enough trust to see someone new after your emotional marriage and divorce? I find I can relate and be around now and then. My 30-year marriage. My last marriage was 5 years, and I started as his employee. Some legal issues still ensue, and I feel like I'm floating. I just can't imagine dating trust.
Oh, this is a good question. Well, first of all, I didn't go on any dates for 2 years. I took a 2-year break, and and I don't hold other people to that same requirement at all. But here's the reason why I did that, because I didn't want to need someone to help me get through and heal from my divorce, because I didn't want any trauma bonds to be formed. And I didn't want to start a new marriage on top of the chaos of the old marriage, right? And so I gave myself 2 years to really heal, be by myself, be alone with my own thoughts, get my feet up underneath me. And I felt like if I no longer needed someone to help me get through it, then I was free to want the right person. And so I think those 2 years really helped me a lot. And I don't agree that time heals all wounds, but it's what we plant in the soil of that time. And if we plant wisely and we plant things that are healing and growing and developing, then I think that it will yield that kind of crop in our life. And then I started slowly. I recognized that I wasn't, even when I started dating, I decided I would go on dates, but I would not put on pressure on myself to pick up on every red flag. Instead, I would go on a date to learn something about myself. And if there was a connection with that other person, and of course I would listen and I would learn things about them. But if there was a connection, then I would go on another date. But the main thing is I just didn't put pressure on myself to figure it all out from a date. Instead, I would go home and I would tell my friends, okay, this is what I learned about myself from that date. And I learned some fascinating things. I learned that I don't want to talk about shipping containers the rest of my life. I think shipping and logistics is awesome, but there was one person I went out with and that's all they talked about were shipping containers. And he had a lovely career and he had other interesting things, but he just really, really liked talking about shipping containers. And so, I learned that about myself. I learned that I love people who listen and who ask questions about me. And I learned that I like someone who is a deep thinker and maybe like an old soul rather than being super impulsive and just talking about, shallow things. Like I need some depth there. I also learned about myself, Leslie, that I need someone who is cherishing, who will walk into a room and be eager to give me a hug before I have to ask for it. And so I learned these things about myself. And, it was scary. It was awful at times. I know all people are made in God's image, but sometimes on that dating app, I would start to doubt that fact, just because there were just some really wacky dynamics and people that didn't tell the truth and, all of that. But I think that, just take it slow, be honest with what you need, and recognize there's no way you can pick up on every red flag quickly. But when you do see yellow flags and red flags, be honest with yourself. Don't fall in love with potential. Fall in love with reality.
I think that is so well said. And, I haven't been in that position of having to date. That would terrify me. So I'm glad you're here to answer that question, because I think, and I think one thing I would add, though, that I think is really important, that you learned what you needed by dating. I don't hear you saying that you told anybody what you needed. And I think that's a difference for women who have been in repeated destructive relationships, that sometimes when we marry someone who does have a lot of red flags and we tell them, oh, I need someone who does this, they'll become that for you for a while. They'll morph into what they think they need to do to get you to marry them. And it's usually a pressured, I can't live without you. This is so hard to be without you, all that kind of stuff, love bombing as well. But be careful that you know what you need, but you don't tell someone else directly all the time what you need, because you want to see who they are and that they're not morphing into what you need in order to win your heart.
Mm-hmm. That's right, Leslie. And, I slipped in there a little bit, like dating apps. That's something I swore I would absolutely, positively never, ever, ever do. And then I realized all I do in life is like, I'm around women all the time because I show up to an office with women. I travel with women. I speak at women's conferences, and so eventually, with the help of some wise friends, I did decide to go on a dating app, and I used the incognito feature so that no one could see my profile except who I chose to see my profile. And that was through the Bumble app. But I'm not advocating for that at all. I'm just saying that was my experience. And I liked that feature so that I wasn't being bombarded with like having to go through chaos and being afraid of who would see my profile.
Mm-hmm. Lysa, I want to respect your time. I know you've got a million things on your plate this week, and I thank you so much. Is there any final words that you'd like to share with the women? Ladies, I'm going to hang on later to answer some more of your questions that you have. I see in the chat. I'll answer some of those questions that you have about Conquer and other things, but I want to be respectful of Lisa's time. But is there anything else that you'd love to share with our women before you go?
I would just say you are worth being chosen. You are worth being loved. And whether that's in the context of a restored marriage or whether that's in the context of walking forward on a different path, you are worth being chosen. You're worth being loved. And so treat yourself that way first. Treat yourself that way first, right? And that doesn't mean like treat yourself that way so that the end of your story could be that Prince Charming eventually rides down the driveway and picks you up or whatever. We don't know how our stories are going to end. We just don't. But treat yourself with dignity because you are a child of God. You're an image bearer of God. And so you have dignity. So walk in the dignity that you already have. And the other thing that I'll say that has really helped me in some of the dynamics where when you're in a support group with a lot of different women who are all going through the same thing, but some are having their prayers answered this way and some are having their prayers answered that way, it can start to feel like I want to be happy for her, but it's just putting a spotlight on what I don't have when she tells me she does have this. And so a friend of mine gave me a really good phrase, and I want to leave it with you. We're all on our own unique path to God's glory, but we're all headed to glory. And so even if our path to God's glory is a little different, realize we're all on the path towards God's glory.
Wow, that's an amazing visualization to have when your path feels rocky and someone else's looks like you're on a surfboard going to, Hawaii. And so, but to realize we're all going to the same place, and everybody has different seasons of rocky paths. And so not to lose sight of the bigger picture. Thanks, Lysa. I appreciate that. So I'm going to let Lysa go to whatever she needs to do for the rest of her day. I'm going to stay on here, but thank you so much. And I'll see you next week.
Sounds good, Leslie. Thank you. And thank you for being patient with the crazy weather we're having. I'll send you a picture, Leslie, so you see.
Okay. I'd love to see that. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. All right. So I'm going to stay a little bit for the questions. I didn't want to bombard Lysa with all the questions. I wanted to pick the ones that I think she could answer best. But I do want to answer your questions. But wasn't it wonderful to just listen to her story? She's got so much wisdom. I really appreciate her as an honorary member of Conquer. She loves this group. She wants people to know about it because she knows how helpful it can be for you. And healing does occur in community. So if you've been thinking about joining Conquer, Conquer is an emotional, spiritual support group, biblically based for women, Christian women who are going through a destructive marriage. You might be through it and getting divorced. You might be divorced and still needing some healing and support. You might be still with a big old question mark. Is this me? Is this me? I don't know. Okay, that's okay. You can join Conquer. You join monthly for $37 a month, or you join for a year for $370 and you get 2 months free. It's totally up to you. You can quit anytime on the monthly membership. On yearly, you're all in. You know you want to be a part, so we don't offer those refunds. So make sure you're all in if you join yearly. But yearly gives you some other perks that you'll see in the sales page if you go to where it says register at leslievernick.com/conquer sign up if you're listening to this on headphones and you don't see it on the sheet. We close our doors next Tuesday. So if you are interested, we highly suggest that you sign up and start. Tomorrow, Facebook, we're going to have a 3-hour Facebook, 3 hours of goodness. So please come back. And we're going to have a lot of different guests. And the guests are going to be people in Conquer, women who are willing to share their story on our public Facebook page with what Conquer has done for them and what's gone on in their life and how they've grown and how they've changed, how Conquer has helped them, so that you can see that. You'll also see it on videos if you go to the sales page, so that you can see that Conquer can help you. We start you right off with a safety plan, helping you to develop safety plan. Now, maybe you're not worried about abuse in terms of physical safety, but maybe you are worried about your sexual safety or even your financial safety or your spiritual safety. Maybe your whole spiritual life is getting twisted around and you're seeing God as an ogre who's going to punish you if you step out of line because of the theology that your husband believes over power and control over you. So we want you to be safe in every way, because you can't learn and you can't grow if you're in survival mode. And so we want you to learn how to calm your body down, how to get safe emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, physically, in every way that you need to do that, so that you can start to think, so that you can make a plan, so that you know what you need to do and how to be the better version of yourself, even in a rocky place. So that's enough about Conquer. If you're interested, go to the sign up and read all about it. We would love to have you a part of our group. But let me answer some questions here. I've been in an emotionally destructive marriage for 40 years. My husband was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 3 years ago, and now I feel I am stuck, unable to leave as he is on disability, does not work, and currently cannot function on his own. Does God expect me to stay in the marriage? Well, I think it depends on the impact that it's causing you. So he's got an illness. So I'm just going to share a personal story from my life, that my mother-in-law, my husband's father, died of ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a debilitating, horrible disease. And, she tried as best she could to take care of him until his illness was impacting her, that she couldn't sleep. She couldn't function because he was very demanding. He was very needy. He was very scared, of course. She had a lot of compassion, but it was killing her. She couldn't do it anymore. So she put him in a home that could take care of his physical needs. She could visit him. She could talk to him. She could encourage him, and she could go home and sleep. She didn't have to take care of him all of the time. So I think that we can have a lot of compassion for someone with a physical or mental illness, but how is it impacting you? So if he's in a manic phase and he's sexually acting out, and then he expects you to be doing sexual favors for him as well, and you don't know where he's been or who he's been with, or if he's in a manic phase and he's draining your entire retirement account and gambling parlors, and because he's believing that he's going to make millions and doing stupid things with your money, and you have no safety valves there for yourself or your own retirement, and he's not receiving treatment, or he's not managing his treatment, or he's not taking his medication, and he's non-compliant those ways, I think that all impacts you. If he's dangerous, if he's physically harming you in his anger, then I think the impact, I don't think God's asking you to give your life physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, to enable his dysfunction. All right. So if he's in a place where he's not stable and he's unwilling to get hospitalized, he's unwilling to take his medication to get stable, so he's not dangerous in any way, then I think it's important for you to recognize that you are still responsible to steward you. And you can care about him, but you can't fix his problem. And if he's not willing to fix his problem, admit his problem, you said he was diagnosed 3 years ago, but is he on medication? Does he have a psychiatrist? Is he getting help? Or was he just diagnosed and he's still acting out the way he always has acted out, but now you have a reason why he's acting out? There's an illness here. Let's just say, even with my father-in-law, he had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, but he was also very demanding and selfish about that. And you too tend to get that way when you're scared and ill, right? Maybe he wasn't that way before that. And so you have a little bit more compassion for that. But people have mental illness. They may have physical illness. They may have cancer. They might have diabetes. They may have a frontal brain tumor. If they're dangerous to you and they're running around with a knife in the house and stabbing you, you still need to get to safety, right? You can have compassion for their illness. It doesn't mean that you're to lay down and allow yourself to be harmed by someone because they're out of their mind, right? It doesn't mean that. God doesn't call you to that. And so we've got mental illness, sometimes physical illness, diabetes, whatever it is. And then we also have a character issue of pride. No, I'm not taking my medication. No, I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not listening to anybody. That is not mental illness, because people who don't have mental illness has those same things. I'm not going to counseling. Nobody can tell me what to do. It's an issue of pride, a rebellious spirit. So if he's got that on top of bipolar, there is nothing you're going to do to help him. If there's no humility, there's no willing to get treatment, there's no gratefulness for your care for him, then maybe you're just enabling his dysfunction to continue by softening the consequences of his own stupidity. What if he actually got arrested or ended up in a mental hospital because he was acting out, and there he could get some treatment, but you've been in the way of that. So I don't know all the details of your situation, but I do know this. I've personally lived with a bipolar untreated person as a kid. My mother was bipolar. She didn't display so much of the depression. She displayed a lot of the mania. It was dangerous. It was scary. It was terrifying at times. And I don't think it's good for you to have to put yourself through that. I don't think God asks you to put yourself through that. But only you can decide that. If your husband is harsh to your pets, but not necessarily you, is that still abusive? Well, one of the signs of dangerous, I have an acronym in our Conquer membership of dangerous. How do you know things are dangerous to you? Is cruelty to pets. That's also one of the signs of sociopathy, of cruelty to pets. So when you can be, we're watching the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right now, and not Palestinian, actually, it's the terrorist Hamas. And, we know that war is ugly. We know that war is awful. And I'm not trying to make a political statement here at all. I know there's two sides to every story, but when we see barbaric acts done on civilians, there's an element of hatred and cruelty in that person's spirit that is scary. And so when someone can be cruel and like being cruel, enjoy hurting someone else, whether it's a pet, even a bug. If someone's pulling out the legs of a bug and laughing, there's something wrong with that person. There's something deeply wrong with that person. And just because they're not doing it to you yet, pay attention. When someone finds pleasure in causing someone else pain, there's something deeply wrong there, and it could be you. And I don't want it to be you. So I would see that as a big red flag for you. How do you handle the question asked by your children? For example, my son doesn't ask these questions all week until he goes to spend the night with my husband, who I'm separated from adultery. Well, I'm not sure what questions he's asking you, and you haven't said how old your son is, but I'm always in favor of telling your children the truth as much as they can handle. So I'm just going to use a metaphor. If your son was 3 and you were pregnant with a big old new baby, and he said, "Mommy, what's in your tummy?" And you said, "Oh, Mommy's just fat." Well, that wouldn't be the truth. So you would say, "There's a baby in my tummy." "Oh, okay. Why is a baby in your tummy?" "Well, you're gonna have a new baby brother or sister soon." "Okay." they're not curious about more. You've answered their question truthfully. All right. But let's say that child is 9 and they see your belly getting big. What's going on, mommy? There's a baby in my tummy. How did they get there? How did you get a baby in your tummy? Is there going to be a baby in my tummy? Well, you might have to answer more truthfully. Well, mommies and daddies make babies. And when they're ready to have a new brother or sister in the house, they make a new baby. And the baby's in my tummy and it's growing right now and it'll come out. Oh, okay. How does it come out? So depending on the questions they're asking and their level of maturity, you're going to tell the truth. You're going to tell the truth. Now, if there is daddy's choosing not to live with us right now, or daddy's doing some behaviors right now that mommy doesn't agree with, and right now we're having to figure out what we're going to do about our marriage. Those might be some things. I wouldn't be in favor of you saying daddy's committing adultery and he's going against God. Those would be ways that would poison your son's feelings toward his father as a person. And so mommy and daddy are having problems right now. We're not living together. Daddy says you're mean because you won't let him come home. Well, daddy thinks I'm mean because I won't let him come home, because I won't let him come home because he's done some things that have really hurt mommy's feelings. And he's not changed those things. And until he's willing to change those things and do some things different, I can't let him move home. So I think there are ways that you can answer a child's question honestly, age appropriate, with as much information as they're really asking. So again, where do babies come from? Didn't come from the 3-year-old. You don't have to go into that. There's a baby. Oh, okay. So get to the place where they got their question answered without all the details, as much as age appropriate. Okay. Understand this, that your children need at least one healthy parent, but your children also want to love both of their parents. Even if one of their parents is unhealthy, they want to love them. They do want to love them. And as unhealthy as their parent is, they want to feel that parent's love, if possible. So you don't want to be the one to wreck that. And part of being healthy is recognizing that what's in the best interest of my kid is to have some positive in their relationship with the other parent, even if there's unhealthiness there. Okay. So if you need your kid to take sides in order for you to feel good, then that's a little bit of unhealthiness in you that you need to work on, not with your kid, with the therapist or a friend, or talk about and conquer. All right. Any suggestions for emotionally supporting teen daughters who are very, very angry at their father because of his behaviors? They begged for me to leave and he did. They begged me for him to leave and he did. But now we're all dealing with the fallout of the separation, or household, business, finances. I am feeling bankrupt in all areas. Yeah. Lisa would be a good one to answer this question. I have talked with her daughters. I've been at Lisa's house a number of times as we're doing these Haven House retreats together, which is starting next week. So I'll be there again. And I've seen all of her daughters talk about this, and, they're angry at their dad. They're angry, and they have every right to be. He's doing some harmful things. So you want to validate their feelings. You want to honor that they're seeing things correctly, that this is wrong. This is harmful to our family, the way we knew it. And you don't want to, if you can encourage them, is to get the help they need to work through it, to not get stuck in that. Every single one of Lisa's kids have gone to therapy. She's gone to therapy. She's very big into making sure people get through this in a healthy way. And so she can't fix their feelings. Those are their feelings. They have to work them through. But if you can provide the support or resources for them to do that, then encourage them. Hey, you're right. This is awful. But guess what? We're not going to get stuck here. We're not going to stay stuck here. We're going to be here for now because this is where now is. It's reality that we're angry and hurt by what your father has chosen to do. But it's not about us. It's not about we're not worth loving or being in a family. It's about his unhealthiness, his sin, his struggle with trusting God and believing God for goodness, and him rebelling against all that. So just like a drunk driver, it's not about you when a drunk driver hits you and kills your kid. It's not about you. It affects you, but it's not about you. And I think it's so tempting to personalize when Lisa's husband's sin was not about Lisa. It affected Lisa. It wasn't about her daughters. It affected her daughters, right? So understand that sin affects those who live with the sinner, for sure. But it's not your fault. It's not about you. It's done to you. And so just like if you were hit by a drunk driver, You have to recover from your injuries. And it's very easy to get stuck in, that's not fair. Why should I have to take a year out of my college to recover from my, because you have injuries, because you have injuries because of what he did. And if you want to get well, you have to do the recovery. Even if he was sorry, he can't do your recovery, right? Even if the drunk driver was really sorry for what he did and repentant, and you have the broken leg or you have the broken pelvis and you have to learn to walk again, that's still your work to do. And I think this is where we get so stuck. It's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, but it's still your work to do if you want to walk again. This is what we talk about doing your work. It's not fair. It's not about you, but it's still your body that needs healing. It's still your heart that needs healing. It's still your mind that's crowded with some lines that have become lies. I love that Lysa said. And so she's got such a great way of putting things together that way. And so, yeah, some things that have been said over you that you, maybe it was your fault they told you and it wasn't, but you believed it and it's impacted you. Can you accept someone's no, but you also know it's a punishment? I would be careful about your second statement. All right. So can you accept someone's no? Yes. And not like it? Yes. Right. I know. So you said, no, I'm not coming to my party. And I like it. Do I know for sure that you're doing it to punish me because I didn't invite you to my party? I don't know that for sure. Right. So if you say no to me, I don't want to go to counseling, or I don't want to give you money, or whatever the no is about, do I know for sure your why if you don't tell me? I don't. So this is part of what we talk a lot about in Conquer, is we make up stories. And our story might be accurate, but then again, it might be just a story that we tell ourselves. But this is the impact it has on you. Okay? So if you accepted their no and you don't like it, without the story, the fact is they said no. They don't want to go to counseling. No, they don't want to lend me money. No, they don't want to reconcile. No, they don't love me anymore. No, they don't. Whatever the no was, hurt. No hurts. Even a 2-year-old doesn't like no. None of us like no. No hurts. Now let's add the story. And I know it's because he's punishing me. Well, now you just add another feeling to it, right? What's the feeling that you add? Anger. How dare him punish me that way? How dare him do that, right? So now you're not just hurt because of the no. Now you've added another layer of suffering that maybe you didn't have to add if you didn't add that story, because you don't know that's true. If God calls us to walk in the truth, it's hard enough to deal with the hurt or the disappointment of no. But when we add the story, he said no because I'm not worth it. He said no to punish me. He said no because, of this or this, and you don't know that's true. You've just added another layer of emotional suffering to your plate. And we do this so much. We do this so much. I've done this before in a Facebook Live, but I had a client whose son died. And the facts are, her son died. Of course she's going to feel feelings, grief, pain. But the story she told herself was, it was my fault. Wow. Can you imagine the extra suffering if your child dies in an accident, the bike accident? That's number 10 pain. A child dying is number 10 pain. And if it's your fault, how do you ever survive that? But that's what she told herself because she let him ride his bike that day. That was the story she believed, that it was her fault. She shouldn't have let him ride his bike. Now, that was a story. What is she going to chain him to the house all day? He's 12 years old. He should be riding his bike. That's what kids do. But because she believed a story she told herself, she suffered guilt, not just sorrow. She suffered self-hatred. So just be careful of the story that you tell yourself. So second part, you don't know it's a punishment unless he's told you, I'm doing this to punish you. Okay. And then you know. But if you don't know, be careful of the story you make up. I don't know how Lysa chose her board, but I would imagine they are some of her closest friends. Any suggestions on books for trauma bonds? There is some books on trauma bonds written around sexual addictions and betrayal bonds, that we form trauma bonds back with the person who's betrayed us that way. But I don't know of any good books, but you could go to Amazon and just books on trauma bonds and see what comes out. How do your children navigate time with each parent? They suffer abuse from him too. How do you handle the alone times when you can't be with the kids because they're with him? So I'm going to answer this as if I were Lisa, and then I'll answer it just as Leslie. So I don't know what Lisa would say, but her children are adults now, so they decide when they will spend time with their dad. She's not in charge of that, which is a huge relief. I think when we feel that we have to manage our children's relationship with the other parent, that becomes a burden. So I would say Lisa would say that her children decide that, and she doesn't give them a guilt trip if they decide not to see him, and she doesn't pressure them to see them. That's their relationship with their dad is their relationship with their dad, and she doesn't get in the middle of that. Now, I would encourage those of you who have this problem is, if your children are suffering from abuse from that parent, I would look at that. If they're claiming daddy doesn't feed me, daddy's beating me, daddy's sexually assaulting me, daddy's touching me in ways that I don't want, daddy's, those kind of things, then I would report that to your lawyer first, and then perhaps to Department of Social Services. Understand that when you do that in a separation time or post-divorce time, you're going to come under very high suspicion, because there's been a story in the legal world that women do that to alienate their children from the dad, that he's not really guilty of any of that stuff. They're just doing that to get full custody. So you're not likely to be believed unless you have some real proof. And you might likely find that being turned on you in terms of legally, because you're trying to alienate the parent from their kids. So unless you have specific proof, and I would start gathering proof if you have it, like I sent my kids, with their medication for their inhaler, and they came back with none of it used, took a picture, all of that. This is what they said. So I would start documenting the neglect or the abuse of any kind, and then consult with your lawyer about what the next step is. So if they suffer abuse from him too, and it's more just yelling and, name calling and all that, I would teach your children how to not personalize it, that daddy's having one of his episodes. Daddy's got a bad day. He doesn't know how to control his temper. He's being mean. It's not my fault. Those would be ways for them to think about that, versus, why can't daddy love me? What did I do wrong? That would be other ways that would be more unhealthy. So I would just teach your kids how to process that, how to have boundaries when daddy gets like this. Maybe it's best for you to go to your room, for you to turn on a movie, for you to put your headsets on and not try to argue with daddy, not to try to participate in that, because it's just going to get worse. We've seen that happen at home in our house. So now that you're at daddy's house, probably that's the best thing that you could do right now, is just not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, right? Just don't participate in them. How do you handle the alone times when you can't be with the kids because they're with him? Well, I think this is your work to do, because your life shouldn't be entirely revolved around momming. Right? You're a woman, you're a person. And so where are your girlfriends? Do you have girlfriends? If you don't, maybe Concord would be a good place to start. So next week I'm going to Charlotte to Lisa's event. And I land at the airport, and I'm meeting, I think, 15 Concord girls. Some of you knew that you've just signed up. All right. And the reason I do this, wherever I travel, I meet with Concord girls. We all meet with one another and go out to eat, is not for you to meet me. I mean, I think you kind of come to meet me, but my goal is for you to meet each other. I want you to have community. I want you to have support with one another. I want you to meet who's in your area that's in Concord, that you could go out to a movie with on a weekend, that your kids are with their dad, that you could have women that you could call in a crisis and say, what my life is like, and I'm having a really hard time, and I just need prayer. We want that. You can do that on our Concord Facebook page. But if you have women in town, that makes it even sweeter, doesn't it? And so we want you to have that opportunity if it's possible. So you need to develop healthy relationships. Trust is rebuilt in relationships. And if you don't have healthy female friends, then that is something you need to work on right now so that you're not feeling like I'm all alone and I have nothing to do when my kids are gone. You should be, yay, my kids are gone. I get some alone time. I'm going to take a bath without being interrupted. I'm going to get my nails done. I'm going to a movie with a friend. I'm going to go hiking because I never get to do that without littles with me. And I'm going to enjoy my day. What would be different about you if you could think that way and actually had something to do? That's part of your growth in getting strong and healthy, of not needing someone to take care of in order for you to feel worth taking care of you. Take care of you. And even if you just spent the day alone, what would be a great day for you? Like if I had to spend a whole day alone, I know exactly what I'd do. I'd go for a hike. I'd go get my kayak. I'd go kayaking. I might get my nails done. I might get a massage. Might watch a movie that I've been wanting to watch. I'll read a great book. There's lots of things that you can do that you would enjoy unless you don't even know yourself enough to know what you would enjoy. Then that might be a whole new venture for you to ask yourself, what might I enjoy if I had the whole day to myself? All right. Next question. How do you navigate getting out when you are financially dependent on this person in the meantime and are limited due to the financial strain on obtaining good legal help and resources? We also have a young child, 6 years old. Yeah, so I would say that you have a child. So I assume that you're home with a child. But I think there are things that you could do from home. There's lots of work that people do from home that could help your economic status become different, that you could begin to work part-time. You could begin to work times that, your kid is sleeping. You could do some evening work virtually. Maybe you could do some house cleaning. Maybe you could do some selling on eBay. You can do some, garage sale collections of things with your child during the day and then sell them on eBay at night. I mean, there are so many ways, if you're resourceful, to make money these days. There are so many ways, if you're resourceful, to make money. I mean, I was just talking to my friend yesterday. House cleaners in Massachusetts make a lot of money. I don't know where you live, and depending on where you live, cleaning someone's house cleaning 2 houses a week can make you some money. All right. And so there's things that you can do while your child's at school to make some money, or rehab your degree, or go back to school. Prepare yourself to live independently financially. Not that you might not have to, you might not have to, but you always should be able to, so that you're never stuck someplace because you can't leave financially. Every single woman, and I'm just going to say this, and I know that it's going to arch some of your backs in terms of, but I want to be a homeschool mom. Great, be a homeschool mom. Be a homeschool mom. Be a mom of 15 kids if you want to be that, as long as you are capable of supporting those 15 kids. If something happens to your marriage and something happens to your husband, part of adulting, women, part of being a grown-up is defined by your capacity to be independent of someone taking care of you, right? I mean, that's what a grown-up is. So you go and you graduate from high school and your parents are saying, okay, what are you going to do to get a job? How are you going to live your life? Move out. That's the goal. Kick you out of the nest. You've got to learn to fly your own wings. And yet so many women think I can just be home. And I stayed home too. I'm not negating that. It's a wonderful opportunity if you can. A lot of women today can't. They can't afford to. They need 2 incomes. But if you can, wonderful. But if you're doing it because you can't get a job or you've never worked and you hope that's your whole life, that's unrealistic today. In today's world, it's totally unrealistic. That part of being a grown-up, so that's you're doing your own work even right now while you have a 6-year-old, is you need to prepare yourself to work, whatever that might be, part-time, full-time, house cleaning, or getting a degree online, or getting a certificate and being a virtual assistant. We have 12 people on our team. I've not met some of them because they all work from home. They're all moms. A lot of them are women in destructive marriages. They all work from home. And they all do amazing work. And they do it because they have to take care of their families. And so I would just encourage you that if you are financially dependent, and that's where you are right now, that you make a plan to not be there a year from now. So what might you need to do to not be financially dependent, even if you still choose to stay home with your child? What can you do to know I'm not dependent? Because when we're dependent on anyone for anything, then they can capture us in some ways, right? Like if I need you to approve of me, then I'm never going to say no. Like Lysa taught, I'm a people pleaser. If I need you to be okay with me, then I'm never going to disagree with you. If I need you to take care of me because I can't take care of myself, well, then I can't leave if you mistreat me. So we've put ourselves as women in a box, which our oppressors kind of know that we can't get away. And I would just encourage you to, if you're in a destructive marriage, number one, that you contact your domestic violence shelter. I'm going to give you the 800 number for that right now. 1-800-799-SAFB. So all you have to remember is the 799. 799 SAFE, and it's an 800 number. All right. So you can call them. They often have free legal consulting for women in destructive marriages or abusive marriages. Sometimes they have places that you can go, sometimes not, they're full, or you don't choose to do that. Okay. And then I would encourage you to go online and say, okay, I'm really good at, what are you good at? I let my nursing license go because I just want to be a homeschool mom. Oops, how do I renew my nursing license? How do I become a virtual assistant and work at home? What kind of jobs are available online at home? And start doing your homework. Start doing your homework. There's lots of things you can do so that you aren't financially dependent. If you want to break free from an abusive relationship, you got to start there. How can you leave safely if you have children and rely on him financially? So I think it's the same question. You can't. So what do you need to do to not be financially dependent? What do you need to do? And if you need to leave quickly, then contact your local domestic violence shelter and they'll help you make a plan to leave quickly and then get on your feet financially. The job market is open. Waitresses can make some good money if you are willing to work hard. House cleaners make good money. If you are good at that and you're dependable and reliable and trustworthy, you can make some good money. I'm not saying it's a great career. For some people, it might be. It might be just the career they want because it's lots of flexibility. They can say no to things and they can do it around their kid's schedule. But sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get where you want to get. That's part of being an adult, of taking responsibility for yourself. And if I need to work, then do what you need to do. Do what you need to do and get really good at it so that you can charge what you want to charge. Can you imagine if you cleaned houses in the more wealthy neighborhoods in your area that you could make really good money doing 2 houses a week? That would enable you to have an apartment or a small house of your own. Right? And so I think these are things that we put our hands up and we say, well, that's not fair. I don't want to have to do that. I want to be home. Okay, that's your choice. But then you're home in a oppressive marriage. Or you might need to get out and get a job to be able to not have that oppressive marriage, oppressive, abusive situation. And if your husband fell over dead tomorrow or ran off with another woman, what are you going to do if you're so dependent? Ladies, we can't allow ourselves to trust his goodwill if we've already seen evidence that it's not there. What if he just decides to leave you for someone else and cuts you off? What are you going to do? I hope that you are prepared, that you know what you would do, and you could do it if you had to. That's part of adulting. It's part of feeling confident that I'm not going to be controlled by fear. I'm going to face my fear and do what I need to do to function. And not just function, but thrive. All right. Does God allow remarriage? How do you start over in a new relationship? I think Lysa gave you some great hints about how to start over in a new relationship. Take it slow. Don't use a relationship to depend on for your lack of health, whether it's financial health or emotional health. Like if you need someone to take care of you, if you need someone to rescue you out of your depression or your bad relationship or your living situation, that's not healthy. And so take the time to get healthy. But then discern, is this a person I enjoy? Is this a person who respects me? Is this a person who Shares my common values. Are we aligned? And don't even say what your values are. Just notice what his are. So if you really value generosity, for example, and kindness, and you go out to someone and you notice they leave a really meager tip, you don't have to say to them, I think you should leave more money. Just notice that they're not very generous. If they're mean and disrespectful to the waitstaff, or they're snarky with someone, not you, but someone else, notice that. Wow, when they get upset, they treat people like dirt. I wonder how they'll treat me when he gets upset with me. Don't think I'm going to date him again. Those are ways that you learn to discern. Are we aligned on things that are important to us? Right? I'm not going to try to fix him or correct him. I'm just going to see who he is and let him show me who he is, and let me show him who I am. And if I'm sushi and he doesn't like sushi, good to know. But I'm not going to try to be steak when he hates sushi, right? Don't try to be what you're not in order to get someone to like you, because they won't like the real you. Be the real you in all of your bestness. Okay. Does God allow remarriage is not my convictions for you to have. You need to read the word and study it and decide for yourself between you and the Lord. This is one of my missions this year, is to really encourage women to think for themselves. Doesn't mean you don't seek wise counsel. It doesn't mean that you don't ask good questions and you investigate, but ultimately you're the one who has to make that decision, because you're the one who has to live with that consequence. So you don't ask another person, does God allow me to go to R-rated movies? You decide. You decide. Right? You're the one who's going to have to answer to him about that. So you decide. Does God allow me to drink alcohol? You have to decide. Right? Does God allow me to remarry? You have to decide that. All right. What tools did you use to combat the lies and negative ruminating thoughts and rehashing in your head? Well, the tool, I don't know what tool Lysa used, but the tool that we use in our group is called a thought journal. So I'm going to write it for you. I'll share it with you. You probably won't be practicing using this really well. I'll show it to you in this way. So here's a tool. It's just something you can chart in your journal. And here is the situation. So whatever happens, so the facts of the situation, okay? So we'll just put the facts. The facts are I'm in traffic. The facts are my husband's late. The facts are my kid just spilled milk for the third time. Whatever it is, big or little, okay? And I'm feeling what? Write it down. I'm feeling angry, hurt. Usually we do this when we're feeling bad feelings, not happy, okay? I'm feeling angry, hurt, guilty, sad, frustrated, whatever feeling you're having, write them down, okay? I can't look backwards like this and write and spell at the same time, okay? So here's the column that we want to kind of think through, okay? So we could put this as thoughts, or we could put this as stories, okay? And so here's a situation. Here's my feelings. Is it because of this that I'm feeling this? So here's my child died, and I'm feeling hurt and sad and, frustrated and angry. Well, she didn't feel all those things, but she did feel hurt and guilty and sad. My child died. Well, okay, so this makes sense, the hurt and the sad. Where's this coming from? It was from her story. It's my fault. I'm to blame. It's my fault. These are her thoughts. These are her beliefs. Okay? I shouldn't have let him ride. Okay? So now you can look at these thoughts and you can ask yourself, are they true? Is it true that I'm a bad mom for letting my 12-year-old ride his bike by himself without me in a safe neighborhood? He's done it a million times before, right? So that helps you to begin to track what are your thoughts. So the facts are, I have a PhD step in my education. I feel fear, because of PhD? No, because I'm telling myself I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I can't write. Now, I didn't have this tool at the time to begin to unpack all that. I just believed him. I just believed it as true, right? And so you might want to practice doing that. And we teach this in our Conquer groups. We teach this in all of our coaching groups, and we work with you with coaches to help you to figure it all out. But I think it's really important because the Lord says that one of the very first steps of getting healthy is that we are transformed in Romans 12, 1 and 2 by what? The renewing of our mind. Take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, because by nature, we exchange the truth of God for a lie. That's just our nature. We're going to do it naturally. So why are we going to add more feelings to that column of suffering, more guilt, more shame, whatever? Because we're telling ourselves things like it's all my fault, or I don't deserve better, or it's I'm not smart enough, or I can't do it, or I'll never make it. We tell ourselves all kinds of things that we believe. And it impacts not only our emotions, that third column, but it impacts the rest of our story. Like if I tell myself, this is too hard, I can't do it, I never try. So if I never try to open door number 3 because I'm already telling myself I can't do it, what might have been different about my life had I not told myself it was too hard? If I told myself, I'm going to try, I'm going to join that Conquer group, I'm going to learn what I need to learn, I'm going to get healthy. See, I never did that because I told myself I can't. It's too hard. It's too scary. I don't want my husband to know. I don't know what to do. So I stay locked in place because of these beliefs I have, instead of saying maybe they're just beliefs that aren't true, but I'm captured by them. And what if I just pressed open a new door by faith and not live by fear? What possibilities might open up for me? What new opportunities might open up for me that I never in a million years dreamed possible until I challenged my own thinking? So those are the things that we teach you in Conquer to do. How can I keep an open mind and think positively when my husband returns from rehab? He's an alcoholic, when he's been emotionally abusive to me for many years. I don't think you need to beat yourself up, because the truth is that people usually return to old habits if they don't have a plan to stay clean. So I think what you need to say to yourself instead is, how can I stay calm and encouraging when he gets home with my eyes wide open? Okay, so how can I stay calm and encouraging? So glad you went to treatment. I'm so glad you're, choosing sobriety. What's your next step for maintaining this? I'm fine. Get off my back. Okay. Now I know. It's not likely he's going to maintain his sobriety, right? So I'm not going to pressure him. I'm not going to like, you need to go to AA today. It's 4:00. Don't you remember? If he's not taking responsibility for his sobriety, don't keep thinking positive, right? If he's not taking responsibility, if you see him taking responsibility, oops, I got to go now. My AA meeting this is important. Great. So glad you're going. What can I do to help your sobriety? Get rid of the wine in the house. Okay, I'll do that. Great. Don't drink in front of me. Okay, I'll do that. You can be positive in terms of as long as he's taking responsibility for his sobriety. When you see that, he went to rehab. I don't know how he ended up in rehab. He might have been forced into it because of a DUI or other kinds of things. So when he gets out, you want to see what he's learned about himself and taking responsibility for his sobriety, right? Because the only person who can stop taking drugs or drinking is him. You can't fix him. All you can do is encourage him, support him, and watch what he does. Not what he says, but what he does. And then you'll know. But if he's emotionally abusive, was he doing that under the influence, or was he that way anyway? So if he's sober and emotionally abusing you, I think you need to say it had nothing to do with the drugs. It had something to do with who he is, right? And maybe you were trying to manage his drug addiction, and that's part of why or his sobriety, and that's why he was abusive to you. So I really want you to let him manage his sobriety. It's up to him to get healthy. You can applaud him, you can support him, you can encourage him. Do not remind him. Do not boss him. Do not guilt trip him. Let him be in charge 100% of his sobriety. and you just watch what happens. How much verbal and emotional abuse should you endure until it's time to leave? I don't know. How much is too much? I can't, it's sort of like, well, how much alcohol can I drink before I'm going to get sick? Some people can drink maybe 3 drinks or 4 drinks before they look intoxicated. Other people can't drink anything or they will get sick. So I think that's an individual question. My question is, though, is that why would you endure any in a healthy relationship? Like, my tolerance for emotional or verbal abuse would be 0 in any relationship. 0. I wouldn't be in a relationship with anybody who treated me that way. That's just my tolerance. I lived with it for 14 years of my life. Long enough. Not doing it. Not doing it. Not doing it with a friend. Not doing it with a husband. Not doing it with even my kids. My kids learned when they started being, trying to control me with guilt trips. Or, hey, not listening to that. I'm not listening to it. If you want to talk to me, you have to figure out how to say it differently because I'm not listening to that. And I just turn around and walk away. So you have to decide how you're stewarding yourself and the effect it has on you. It has such an effect on me that I am just not going there ever again in my life. So, but that may not be you. Maybe you're, I don't know, stronger in that area or more willing to take someone. I mean, so if someone were hitting you, how hard do they have to hit you before it's not okay? If they pinched you or if they just flicked you, would that be okay? Like, it's disrespectful for them to flick you, for them to slap you, for them to strangle you, for them to punch you. Those different levels of intensity are different, but they're all disrespectful. When is the line drawn between I'm not letting myself be disrespected this way, whether you flick me or whether you punch me? Those would be my boundaries, but I don't know what yours are. But I do think it'd be a good idea for you to think through that. And maybe joining Conquer would help you to figure that out. My marriage is broken after decades of abuse. All my feelings for him are gone, even though he's now working on himself. We're separated. How can I know if I'm in a temporary period of healing in which the deadness is protecting me, or if it's evidence of the harm which is too much to risk trying again? You don't know that. So I would say that right now, if he's working on himself, then you do work on yourself. Because as you get healthier, you'll be able to notice healthier in him, and you'll also be able to notice more manipulation or wordsmithing or game playing in him. And then that'll help you know. And so as you get healthier, you will have better boundaries. You'll be able to better discern. You'll be able to protect yourself. You'll be able to steward your life better. So all that, so ladies, your husband may be unhealthy in major ways. And like Lysa, her husband was unhealthy in very major ways. She was unhealthy in biblical ways that look biblical. Like she was too nice. She was too forbearing. She was too accommodating. And those all look like gracious biblical qualities until they're not, until they're harmful to you and to your relationship. So we're not saying don't please people. Please people. I love to please people. That's why I'm hanging out here with you an extra whole hour, right? I love to serve. I want to do that. And when I don't want to, I will say, I gotta go, right? So I can say no without worrying about how you're going to feel about that. I'll give you what I want to give you, and I'll give you as much as I can give you. And then I won't, right? And so this is so important for you to get healthier so that you can say no, that you know what you want, what you like, what you don't want in a relationship, in your day. I know what I like to do in a day, and I know what I don't like to do in a day. Right? Those are really important parts of being strong and healthy. I can totally support myself if I have to. I learned that in my second year of marriage when my husband got gravely ill and I thought he would die. I thought, oh my gosh, I can never not be able to support myself. We had no life insurance. I was pregnant at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have always got to be, it doesn't mean I didn't stay home with my child. I did. When I adopted my second child, I stayed home for a couple of years. But I always knew if something happened to him, I was fully capable of taking care of me and my children. This is healthy. This is growing healthy. This is learning. When I mistreated my child in a moment of anger and yanked him up in a fit of anger, I didn't blame him. I recognized, oh my gosh, I'm becoming like my mother. I don't want to do that. God help. Didn't do that again. So this is part of, we can look at someone who's grossly unhealthy and say, they've got a bunch of work to do and I'm just going to wait to see. Or we can say, they got a bunch of work to do and I've got some work to do too. I've got some work to do too. I didn't see or speak to my mom for 15 years. And I did my own work. I had a lot of work to do, a lot of forgiving, a lot of boundary work, all of that stuff. And spiritual mindsets of the beliefs I believed were wrong in many ways. And I've shared that with you. But when I had the opportunity to serve my mother when she was dying, I could because I wasn't filled with any more bitterness or anger. And I had really good boundaries. And I knew how to do those. And so I could be the daughter I wanted to be, to honor someone who dishonored me and didn't love me very well. I could show up in a way that made me proud. And I think that made God proud in a moment. But I could have never showed up that way had I not done my own work. Right. And so during this time, don't just sit and twiddle your thumbs. Do your work. Try and conquer or get counseling or do whatever you feel you need to do to get healthy so that you'll know whether you want to go back into this relationship or it's done. The marriage is dead and you can wish him well. I'm so glad you got healthy. I'm so glad I got healthy, but I don't think I can trust you again. I think we can really love someone well and still not trust them. And so to live with them would be stupid if you don't trust someone. I can live with someone I don't love and I trust. I cannot live with someone I love and don't trust. So you have to decide what you can do and what you can't do. All right. Is it wrong to use a private investigator if you know he's lying about his whereabouts? Again, I am not your conscience and I'm not your Holy Spirit. So ladies, put in the chat what your thoughts are. I think it's helpful to get opinions about that. So if you need some facts in order to clarify to yourself and perhaps to some people helpers like your pastor or lawyer of what needs to happen when, then maybe that's a good idea. If you're just trying to catch him so that you can rub his nose into it and hope that wakes him up, that's not going to wake him up, right? Proving to him that he's a liar. He already knows he's a liar. So proving to him that he's a liar with pictures and PI reports isn't necessarily going to cause him to repent. It may cause him to get sneakier and more clever in doing what he's doing, but it's not going to cause him to repent. All right. So if you need that information for your welfare, then that may be important information to get. All right. So you have to wrestle with that. There's a cost and there's a benefit to everything, right? So you decide whether the benefit for you is worth the cost. But if the benefit is for him, he knows exactly what he's doing. So you don't need a PI to show him what he's doing, right? So the benefits for you that you need those facts in order to take the next right steps, then maybe that's what you need to do. All right, we are at the end of our questions. So I invite you to come back tomorrow for our 3-hour live stream. We're going to start at noon Eastern time. We're going to go all the way to 3. I'm going to answer questions for some time. I'm going to share with you some important information for some of you. We're going to have interviews with 3 different sisters from Conquer who are going to share a little bit of their stories. You're going to meet our team, our coaches who serve you in Conquer through our phone calls and Q&A time. You've met many of them on Facebook Live, so we'll meet them again. And they'll get a chance to tell you what they believe Conquer does for people. And I would just encourage you, if you are sitting on the fence right now, what does it cost you? $37? I would say it would cost you $100. $100 for 3 months, because 1 month isn't really going to give you enough. I think it will if you jump in right away, but sometimes by the time you jump in, it's already half over. So give yourself 3 months of Conquer. If you're sitting on the fence, if you're all in, join for the year. It's certainly a better benefit. But if you're sitting on the fence, join for the month, first month and second month and third month. Give yourself 3 months, go through the Conquer journey, begin to meet your sisters in the Conquer community, and ask yourself, is this helping me? Is this helping me learn to get healthy? Is this learning to identify the wrong beliefs I have? Is this learning to get stronger and not live in fear, but learn to trust God and put my brave on, put my courage on, like Lysa talked about in that poem. I love that poem. How am I going to learn to get brave in a situation that's scary? That is what we have to do, right? We have to put our brave on. So I would encourage you, if you're sitting on the fence and you haven't joined yet, what is stopping you? It's not a big risk. even for those of us who don't have a lot of money, we spend money, $37 on Starbucks and video games and other silly things that we buy on Amazon and all kinds of stuff. $37 is, for most of you, is not going to break you. And if it is going to break you, contact us. If you really need to be in Conquer, we will scholarship you. So it's not going to break most of you, but it may change your life. And so if you're on that fence and you don't know what to do, I would say try it. Try it for 3 months. You can quit anytime. It's not you're not signing your life away. You're not signing up for anything. If you're worried about confidentiality, if you're worried about your husband finding out, go get a Visa card at Walmart and join using that. All right. So you don't have to join with PayPal or ask your mother to use her credit card and pay her the money. There's ways that you can do this. And this is part of being resourceful. If you need something, be resourceful. You can get it. And you don't need to let fear decide. You might still feel fear, but something bigger than fear can decide. And if you want to just check out the information, go to the site, leslievernick.com/conquer sign up. And I hope to see you tomorrow at our live stream where we were going to be having interviews with other Conquer sisters. So take care. Thanks so much for being with us. God bless. Bye-bye.